Hi guys, what's up? Finally, I am back with an individual instruction video after receiving so many requests from you guys. I will explain from A to Z about individual instructions in this video. So, let's get started. Individual instructions mean giving special instructions to your players individually. It's like giving your player a special task and he will follow it. If you go to individual instructions, you will find 4 options like these: 2 for offense and 2 for defense. Offense 1 and offense 2 are the same, and defense 1 and defense 2 are the same. But if you go to defense, you will see that man marking and tight marking options are not available. These options depend on your opponent. That's why it will only be available during a match. So the best time to set individual instructions is when you are playing a match. Set the instructions based on your opponent's squad. So first we will start with offense. If you go to offense, you will see 3 types of instructions. They are defensive, offensive, and anchoring. Let's start with defensive. If you go to defensive, you will see that you can select any of your player for the defensive role except your goalkeeper. By defensive instructions, it means that when you select a player, the player will be focusing on defending. But this differs among defenders, midfielders, and strikers. For example, we will select Theo Hernandez. I don't know if you know about Theo Hernandez, but Theo Hernandez is a very offensive player. Despite being a defender, he leaves his defensive position to join the attack. But you might not want him to leave his defense and join the attack, because it makes your defense weak. So you can use defensive instructions on him. After using defensive instructions, he will not leave his defensive position. He will only focus on defending. So when you select a defender for a defensive instruction, he only focuses on defense and very strongly guards the defense. Now, what if we select an attacking midfielder for defensive instruction? For example, let's select Messi. Now Messi will act as a backup in defense when it's necessary, but he will not stick to the defense forever. When he gets the chance, he will also attack. Now what happens if you select a striker for defensive instruction? The striker will come down to help the defense when it is necessary. Then he will go back to his forward position again after getting the ball back. You should only use this when you are going on full defense. We are done with defensive. Now let's see how offensive instructions work. In simple words, if you use offensive instruction, your player will be offensive. When you go to offensive instruction, you will only see midfielders and defenders. You will not see any forwards because forwards are already offensive. So, they don't need it. Let's see what happens if we use offensive on a defender. The defender won't play fully defensively. He will go up to help the attack more than usual. But it's quite risky because it might break your defense. That's why I don't recommend it. Use this only when you are ahead by few goals or you need goals badly. Now let's try using offensive on a defensive midfielder. When you use offensive on a defensive midfielder, he defends but also goes on attack more than usual. It's less risky than using on a defender. Now let's try using offensive on an attacking midfielder. I think using offensive on attacking midfielder is the best. When you use offensive on an attacking midfielder, he will fully focus on attack. You will always find him during your attacks. Now the last one is anchoring. This is the most useful option to me. Anchoring means holding your own position. If you set it to a destroyer, he will stay in that position rather than charging here and there for the ball, which destroyers usually do. If you set it to a striker, the striker will hold his center forward position. He won't come down to play make or wander around here and there. This rule is applicable as player of all positions. If you set it to a defensive midfielder, he will hold defensive mid. If you set it to right back, he will hold his position. But the most beneficial part of anchoring is, it saves your stamina. So, it is best to set it on a striker. But you can't use multiple instructions at the same time. You can only set one instruction at a time. As I have said before, Offense 1 and Offense 2 are the same. So, What you can do is set one instruction in Offense 1 and another instruction in Offense 2. In this way, you can use two instructions at the same time. Now let's talk about defense. If you go to defense, you will see four options. Let's start with tight marking. When a player of your opponent is playing too good and causing you trouble, you can select him for tight marking. When you use tight marking on a player, your defenders will always mark him tightly and won't give him any space to play. By using this, you can stop the most dangerous player of your opponent. But it has a drawback. By focusing on a single player too much, your defense might create gap. So be careful. Now, man marking means assigning one of your player to mark one of the player of your opponent. For example, I assigned my Eric Dyer to mark my opponent's Harry Kane. Now, what my Eric Dyer would do is, he will only mark Harry Kane throughout the whole match and won't give him any space to play. He won't focus on defending other players. He will only target Harry Kane. Use this when you need to stop a dangerous player. Counter target means the player that is ready for the counter attack. When you select counter target, he won't drop back to defend. He always stays forward and saves stamina when the team is defending. He is always ready to receive the ball when your team regains possession and counter. This works best for attackers who are fast, but it weakens your defense. You can use players like Rashford, Mbappe, Salah, etc. for counter target. Deep line can be used on midfielders, forwards only. You can't use it on defenders. And if you use 5 defenders, you can't use deep line on a defensive midfielder. It's only useful for a defensive midfielder. Don't use attackers for deep line. That doesn't help. When you select a defensive midfielder for deep line, he drops deeper than usual and acts like a third center back. He blocks passes and stops counterattacks before they reach your defenders. It makes your team more solid and harder to break down, especially in the middle. But it makes your midfield weak. So, only use it when you are ahead by goals and want to play full defensively. And just like offense, you can't use more than one instruction at the same time in a defense. So, what you can do is use one instruction in defense 1 and one instruction in defense 2. Now the final question, which individual instructions you should use overall? I would say it depends. I recommend you to make your own combination based on your situation, but I will still give you a small suggestion. By default, I would use these instructions. If I want to go on full attack, I would use these instructions. If I want to go on full defense, I would use these instructions. I would use tight marking on the toughest player of my opponent. Again, I am saying that this is not fixed. It depends on your situation. That's all for today. If you want to become pro at corner kicks, watch this video too, and make sure to subscribe.